Eat, Sleep, Raise podcast. Our special guest today is Victor Alvarez, founder and owner of Induction Performance, owner of Bradenton Motorsports Park, and drag racing event promoter.
Yep, that's me. Co-owner of Induction. I gotta give my partner his credit. You know?
Okay. New York native who actually just flew in a couple hours ago from Florida. Thank you for joining us tonight. You're clearly a contributor in the drag racing industry, more so in the past 10 years.
I mean, I grew up in drag racing, but yeah, I've been contributing to the sport since, I would say, like 2013.
From organizing, promoting events at your own racetrack to owning a performance shop that modifies the race cars, are there any other businesses that you're involved in that I didn't touch on that you want to mention?
Those are the only ones that I would feel are worth mentioning.
Okay. I'm sure there's other businesses also outside of motorsports.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get into other things too, because unfortunately, I also really enjoy racing. So you can never have too many revenue streams.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like people say, don't keep all your eggs in one basket. You kind of like kept them all in one basket in motorsports, kind of.
Yeah.
Well, it's good that you were able to like split up your, it's not just one thing. You have the shop, you have, the racetrack.
I feel like that's kind of also always been giving me like an upper hand in a lot of ways, because when I became a race promoter and I wanted to go to a business to get a sponsor, I knew both sides of it. Like, I know what I want if I'm the sponsor, and I know what I want as the event promoter. So I feel like I've been in every seat, so to speak. And I think it's given me a little bit of an upper hand.
Let's take it all the way back here, because you said you grew up around racing.
Yeah.
Born and raised in New York, eventually moved to Florida. So let's step it back. How so did you get into racing, and could you take us through the timeline of racing in New York to where you are today in Florida?
Yeah. So growing up, my dad and my uncle had a performance shop. Did a lot of Supras, and I was a nerd when it came to the car stuff. Like,
what part of New York?
So my dad had a shop in Long Island, Valley Stream. I grew up going to Long Island Dragway, Englishtown, Acco, Maple Grove. Like, the
shop was imports and domestics, or?
So it started as like general repair, and then my dad had a Supra, and it was fast.
What?
He had an '89 Supra.
MK. What is that?
MK3.
Yep. Cool.
So at the time, he had a really fast car, and you know how like back then it was different. We didn't have social media, so like if you went out to the street races and your car was fast or you beat somebody, it got talked about, and like that just kind of turned into a thing. And then people were like, "Hey man, will you work on my Supra?" And
right.
it just turned into this thing where him and my uncle would build Supras.
So I know not to cut you off, but I know back then, like you said, if you had a fast car, people knew you.
Yeah.
And usually you had a nickname or like some type of significant that like people could identify, like, yo, that's Turbo Mike, or that's such and such. What was your dad's nickname?
My dad always just went by Fernando, but everybody knew that red Supra. Like,
that's Fernando with the red Supra.
Yeah. But that red Supra, everybody knew it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that car was really fast in its time, And
what year is this?
This is, man. So my dad's car probably was like doing work on the street, like really fast and starting to go to the track, probably like 99 to, I moved out of Florida 05. So like 99 to like 03, 04.
Okay.
So that's what got me into it. And then like, I didn't have any friends that were my age. All my friends were my dad's friends. So I was either at his shop, one of his friends' shop, a race, or like hoping they would take me somewhere to like go work on a car, like anything.
You're trying to tag along.
I was just tagging along. Yeah, like I would go to my dad's shop.
How old were you at this age?
So, man, how old am I? I'm 33 now. I'll be 34 in November. So, man, I'm 10 to 15 years old was probably when I like really, really got into it. I mean, it's funny, but like when I was in like 7th grade, I literally downloaded a wholesale application for a big like parts distributor at the time, like printed it, brought it to my dad's shop and made him fill it out with me. And like I was selling parts. Like I was like anything that I could do. I just wanted to be part of the scene, in the mix. Like, drag racing was great back then. Import drag racing, especially.
Yeah, that was like during the height of it.
Yeah, like my dad was good friends with Craig Paisley. Like when I tell you I was hanging out with people, I was hanging out around like Craig
All the
Paisley.
big dogs.
Yeah, like
Vinny 10.
Vinny 10, my dad's friend that passed away, Bert, that had a bunch of like Eclipses and Eagle Talons. They had a shop in Long Island, Pro Speed. Ricky Bailey, Top Level Performance. Like I grew up around like the height of the import scene, at least in the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to be a part of it any way I could, like at all. And then in 2005, we moved to Florida, and I was still in high school. I was a junior in high school. So
Closed up shop in New York.
Closed up shop, moved to New York, or moved to Florida. My dad got another general repair shop, and he didn't really, he was kind of getting out of the car stuff. Not that he still has a car, like he's still into it. You're always into it, right? But he wanted to just focus on his business. And he had a Supra and started off like, Pop, let me take the car and do whatever, So
This is still the same Supra?
So this is a different Supra, but an older one still.
Okay.
So I would like take his car and go to Bradenton Motorsports Park when I was like 17 years old.
Because you could drive a year earlier down there, right?
The perk of moving to Florida, the only thing that I was excited about was that I could get my permit as soon as I got there, which here I couldn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I think that up here is like 17.
Down there, it's like 15 or something. Yeah. So like the day that I got to Florida, the only business that I needed to handle was
the DMV, right?
My permit. Yeah.
Oh, that's dope. Yeah, I didn't know that because in Jersey it's 16. So, you had your full license at 16 then.
We're not going to talk about that, but I could have.
He was driving.
Well, no, let's talk about it.
I was driving.
You were operating a vehicle.
No, all right. So the truth is that even when I was like 14, I was street tuning cars, like myself.
And we're talking about why you didn't get your license at 16.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had been driving for so long that I kind of just like
I'm good.
I don't need that, right? And then you get pulled over with your permit, and you don't even have somebody else in the car with you, and it makes things a little bit more difficult. So I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but I probably didn't actually have a license till I was like 21.
No way. Because they wouldn't let you get one, or just because you never felt like getting one?
Well, no, I never felt like getting one. And then anytime I'm like, I'm going to go get my license, I'd get pulled over for like the stupidest thing.
And then your date just keeps getting pushed back.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Dang, that's crazy.
So when we were in Florida, I would take my dad's car and I'd go to the track, or I'd go to they used to have the Tampa Super Meet, which was pretty cool in Florida area. Like that was actually a really good Super Meet. I would go to these things and I would dabble, and I would just get this fire in me. Man, I want to do something. And started, going to the street races and stuff like that, and then started meeting people and started working on Supras again.
So you went from Long Island to Tampa.
Yep.
And around 17 is when you started working on Supras?
I had already been working on Supras when I lived here. Like literally when I was 14, back then cars would have like SAFCs and VPCs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would like
you were tuning them knobs?
I would tune them. I would go to school. Like when you're supposed to be doing other stuff, when you got
the magazine in the middle of your book.
Not even that. You get your time on the computer. I would be on like HKS's website, learning what VPC stood for and like what it did and what all the knobs did, and learning like how to set up a boost controller. Like I was nerding out.
Well, shout out to whoever let you touch their car.
Oh, there were some brave souls.
Yeah. At 14, like, Vic's gonna tune your car. I'm like, what?
I don't even know how I got into this stuff, but like I used to go to TNR Racing, and I would spend my like Friday night and Saturday night there dyno tuning cars, because I was like one of the only dynos around back then. Like there was, it was DRT, TNR. There weren't a lot of dynos in New York,
I need to see pictures of this.
I have
seeing a 15-year-old Vic tuning a Subaru. Wow.
Yeah. So I was very into it. And when I moved down there, the same kind of thing happened where but it was me. I'd go to the street races, I would race, and then somebody would be like, hey man, will you work on my car? And next thing you know, we were working on Supras again.
And how was the scene down in Florida compared to New York?
It was very different, but very cool. So like in New York, most of the time that we would go to the street races, and it was still kind of probably like this, everybody would race from a stop. Like it was a stop with a flag man.
Yeah.
Everybody gambled. Like I never went to a street race that was free unless it was like friends. Like my dad would race one of his friends. There was no such thing as a free
No, this is for something.
Yeah. So when I went down there, like everybody's racing from a roll, and I'm like, how do you watch this? Like what do we do? You know what I mean? And gambling, at least in the import scene, was like not a thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as competitive, but there were a lot of cars. Like the scene was good. The scene, like you'd go out on a Saturday night and you could drive around and see tons of beautiful cars all over the place, and you'd line up with somebody on the highway and do a pull, whatever. But it was different. The cars were very similar, right? But it was different, like
style of racing.
Yeah, different, like a different kind of lifestyle. You know what I mean? But it was cool. Here, when I left New York, it was all about like Supras, Civics, Turbo Civics. That was like the time where Turbo Civics were really starting to take off. Eclipses were really fast. They were all-wheel drive.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have like Cyclones and Typhoons and like, some of the domestic stuff, Mustangs. When I went down there, I remember the first time I saw a Nissan 240 with a SR20, and I was like, this thing's turbo? Like what? But back in that time in the South, that was a big thing because everybody was importing a lot of engines there, and they were doing a lot of engine swaps. So like 1JZs and SR20s, like that's the first time I started seeing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What age were you when you started Induction Performance? Because I'm guessing when you were younger, you were doing it at your dad's shop.
Yeah. So from 07 to like 2009, I worked with my dad. And like 2009 or 10, we had two franchise stores, Meineke mufflers. Back in the day, they used to be a thing too. And
still is.
Yeah, it still is, I guess, up here. Down there, not as much.
Oh, it died down.
Yeah, not as much. But we had those, and like, I was doing it because that's what we were doing, you know what I mean? And I just wanted to work with my dad. Like, my whole life, I idolized my dad. I wanted to do what my dad was doing. But it would turn into that every night I would close the shop.
It's version 2.
And then we would start working on Supras. And so I would work until 6 on, doing brakes and mufflers and whatever you needed to do. And then from that time till
whenever
you got really tired,
yeah, you're working on other stuff.
Supras, work on our own cars, work on other people's cars, whatever. 2000, like 2009, I met my business partner, Alpha. He comes to New York all the time still and tunes cars.
He still tunes?
Yeah, he's one of the greatest to ever do it, in my opinion. And it kind of worked out where it was like, he was tuning a lot of cars in the Tampa area, and I was working on a lot of cars in the Tampa area. So at one point, there was like a little small rivalry, and then it turned into he needed a good place to send his customers. Because, you're tuning a car, you have a problem on the dyno.
Trying to work on it.
Go see this guy, get it fixed. So probably 6 months of like literally us working together every single day, me working on his customers' cars, then I'd go to the dyno with him, make sure they were good, etc. One day we were driving, I'm like, why don't we just open a shop? So 2011, March 2011, we started Induction Performance officially.
And how old were you at that age? Or at that time?
2011, that's 12 years ago. So I was 21.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you just got your license?
Yeah.
Well, we were opening a business. I had to do it.
What was the biggest challenge of starting a shop at 21?
Man, I think I definitely had it easier than a lot of people, and I'm okay with admitting that, because I had been around it for so long, and I was never like, I don't want to say I wasn't a spoiled kid, and I wasn't like given things, but I was given tons of opportunity from being with my dad. And my mom, my dad, like, if I ever wanted to do something, they would never tell me that I couldn't do it, or like there was no hesitation. Like, yeah, you should do it, and they would push me, and they would help me do it in any way that they could, whether it was just support or whatever. So I had it pretty easy, truthfully. We had the Meineke shop and 2 bays. There was 2 bays next to it. They used to tint windows, and those people ended up moving out.
So you took that over.
And my dad hooked me up with the landlord, talked to him for us, and like he gave us a killer deal. We moved in there. We bought our first dyno, which we still have, Dyno Jet. Shout out to Dyno Jet. That thing's a champ.
Still works.
He's still killing it. But we had it, easier than I think most people would. Alpha had been doing cars for a long time at that point too. I was 21. I was living with my parents. Like that to me, that helped me
That's
a lot.
that's a bonus.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, it was challenging, but I had been around it for so long, and I had so many good people that I could call and lean on and like talk to, and I had learned so much and I had seen so much. I had it easier than probably a lot of people did.
I think that also helped too. Like, you've been in the business, even though you're a performance shop now, you guys still have a background of running operations.
Yeah.
So,
No, I mean, I tell people all the time, they're like, man, you're so young and like whatever. Like, I guess I'm young and, to most people, like they look at me like, oh, you're only 33, you're doing all this. But to me, I've been doing this for 20 years.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like legitimately, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing this a long time. I've been through it, and I've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot the hard way. I've had some stuff that I'm stubborn. I had to learn on my own, but I had it easier than a lot of people just because I was just, man,
You're around it.
I was raised around some hitters, man, some dudes that like were serious about this racing stuff, and it motivated me, and I learned a lot, and I had a cheat sheet.
Well, let's talk about that. Who would you say, you said you're raised around some, big shots in the industry or in racing.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you credit the most and why?
Well, my dad for sure, but that's not fair. So aside from my dad,
You already gave him his flowers.
Yeah. Two people aside from my dad would be, rest in peace, his friend Bert. I always idolized him just because this dude was a problem on the street. Like back then, it was all about street racing.
Mm-hmm.
So you could go to the track and run whatever. It didn't matter. This dude on the street, he was just one of those guys that if you could have the fastest, you think you have the fastest car or whatever. If this dude is next to you, you're worried. He could have a slower car and you know it. You could like leave the track. He went 12s, you went 11s, and you're shook. And I really like that. And so I'm a very competitive person. So I love the competitive side of it. So I would say him and Craig Paisley. Watching Paisley come up from his first shop in Hempstead and have the big sponsors of like HKS and TRD and like really moving parts in New York at this time.
Yeah, that was a big thing.
He was the guy that was moving parts like for real in New York. You know what I mean? If you needed something HKS or like any of the JDM stuff that was hard to get and like that everybody was using, he was the guy.
Yeah.
If you didn't get it from him, the guy you got it from got it from him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I got to see all of it. I got to see the guys in the street that were like racing every night for, whatever money they could put together and like competitively. And then I got to see guys like Paisley that would have the huge 18-wheeler trailer with the TRD wrap in the car and like we would go to Maple Grove or we'd go to Englishtown and I'd be right there with them. And not just, I got to give my boy Rashim his flowers too. And the guy that worked for Paisley, super humble, super soft-spoken guy, Rashim, him and my dad were friends, and Paisley, they were all real tight. And this dude was a wizard, man. This guy was the man. But he would always take the time to like explain things to me and teach me things. Because I don't know if he just thought that I would eventually do something with it, but he always showed me love.
Was that Paisley's crew chief?
Yep.
It was, right?
Yeah.
I remember him.
That dude was the man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to him too.
So of those three guys, I mean, other than being around them, what would you say was so inspirational that you were able to take away from them?
Man, I think anybody who is into the racing side of, the motorsports scene, I think it's the competitiveness, man. Like seeing what these guys were willing to do and what they would do to win a race and seeing like the excitement and the celebrations when you would win a race and when you would do well. And then also, I mean, for me, seeing how people viewed that, right? So like back then, Eddie Bello, Vinny Ten, Lisa Kubo, Craig Paisley, like people talked about these people like they were
legends.
Yeah, they were. They still are.
But even at that time.
Oh, at that time, like the way that people would talk about them, like when you're a kid, I want to be that dude. You know what I mean? Like if I'm going to do something, I want to do it to the best of my capability. I've always been that way. I've always been competitive. Even like if I play a sport and I'm not good at that sport, I'm still going out there to play to win. Like that's just how I am. So I think seeing how it's received and seeing like the accolades that you get and just like it's a respect thing. But I think drag racing is a ego-driven sport.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's about that really at the end of the day, if we're being real.
So this is, I guess, it's hard to pin down because you've been working on Supras for so long.
Yeah.
My original question was how many Supras has Induction Performance worked on, but let me make it a little bit more broader. How many Supras have you personally worked on?
Man, well, I'm very fortunate that now I don't really work on the cars myself. You know, obviously we're like, the way I look at it, we're a brand. So like now when you bring your car to Induction Performance, you bring your car there for our expertise. We have a shop full of like some just badass dudes. So like I don't physically go out there and work on the cars, but I'll say like this is the setup we need to do and all that. So I'll still count that.
Yeah.
I've probably touched in some way or another. Man, it's got to be like, it's over 500 Supras.
Wow.
It has to be.
Wow.
Like, I mean, when I lived in New York and I moved out of here when I was like 15, I had probably already worked on like hundreds of Supras.
So
Now-
500, do you think anyone else has worked on more Supras than you have?
Probably. There's guys that have been doing it for a long time. Like, I mean, you know, like Titan Motorsports, they've been working on Supras for a long time. I would say like at this point, they probably do more parts and we probably work on more cars than they do, you know, whatever. Maybe it evens out or whatever, but there's guys who've been doing it a long time. But I guess if you take if you take into account, we worked on, like I started, so that was another thing. Like when I started working on Supras, I worked on the older Supras. I worked on 89, like the Mark III Supras with 7Ms and trunk ass 7M motors and all that. Like when you worked on those, you would tell people you worked on Supras and then they would be like, oh, you work on Mark IIIs.
Yeah.
And like that was a thing. And like right before we moved out of New York is when we started working on the 2J stuff. And like I remember clear as day, like when I was like 14 years old, removing my first 2JZ from a Mark IV Supra and like me and my dad and my uncle building it and putting it back in the car. Like I remember the whole process clear as day. I remember the car, the owner of the car, like that was a hurdle to get to that point. Because literally like I would tell people, and I knew everything I needed to know. There was differences, whatever. The 2J is easier, right? But that was the thing. Like
You were just, people have the stigma like, oh,
yeah,
you
like
work on the old
you
shit.
work on those. Not because like I mean, Supras have always been like a very legendary car.
Yeah.
If you had a Mark IV Supra and you pulled up to our shop and we had 20 Mark III Supras and not one Mark IV in sight, you're gonna be like,
I don't
You know
know.
what I mean? Yeah, like, which is fair. I respect it. But we had just started to like really start working on the Mark IV Supras when we moved. But man, I started on those and worked on hundreds of those and worked on hundreds of the Mark IVs. It's crazy.
Now, do you think, I think it's pretty funny too that some of the bigger super shops are all in Florida.
Yeah, it's funny that that's the case.
Kind of like how it worked out.
I don't think it was always like that. I think, man, back in the day, like there's definitely been, the Northeast has changed a lot. I don't live up here, but I have a lot of friends up here and whatever, and I pay attention as much as I can, and I try to be as involved with the sport as possible. Losing Long Island Dragway, losing Englishtown. You know, ATCO was really quiet for a while. That stuff had a huge effect on the sport, you know? Like you have to wonder, would guys like Vinny 10 still be working on Supras if there were racetracks? Would Paisley have stayed in New York working on Supras? Or, you know what I mean? Like you have to wonder. Because at the time, in my opinion, Florida was nowhere near what the Northeast was doing. And then like probably like 05, 06, Titan started doing stuff. And then you had like Battleground Performance was one in Georgia and stuff. But I mean, New York used to run it.
It held its own for a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
What is the fastest Supra you've ever worked on?
To date, the fastest car that we've built would be Booger, on the back of my shirt. Really good friend of ours. The car actually came out of Texas. Powerhouse Racing originally built the car for another friend of ours, Will Dugas. And the car was really cool, came up for sale. Customer of ours was like, man, I'd like to buy that car. It's cool. So it's one of those things that always seems like buying a built race car already built is like the easier way to do it. And the car was built well, don't get me wrong, but at this point we've completely, like, I think the front wheels are the only things we haven't changed on the car. We've rebuilt the car.
You actually drove that car at World Cup, right?
I drove that car at World Cup. I drove the car at TX2K. I've been the one, since he's bought it, I've been the one who's raced it.
Oh,
But yeah, we've like completely rebuilt that car. We've learned a lot with that car. You know, like you can work on these cars, these 2J engines for a really long time. And when you get to a certain point, if you want to keep on going, you have to learn and learn and learn. Like you always have to be willing to learn and willing to like keep pushing and step out of your comfort zone. And we learned a lot with that car. It's a pretty heavy car. It's, you know, like an uncut stock chassis car.
Okay.
And it went 6.8 at 210 TX2K like 2 years ago. World Cup finals, we put a smaller turbo on it to run Street Fighter and ran like 712 or something like that with it. So it's a pretty cool car. Working on more of like a real race car now, like a lightweight Supra that'll have like a 3/4 chassis type build. So like a lightweight Ford 9-inch, like solid axle, 4-link, badass car. We're hoping to make that one pretty fast.
this is a new shop car.
Yeah.
So I noticed that the other day on social media you posted you're going to sell the chassis, the old Paisley chassis.
Yeah.
So I know that for some time you were going to redo that car.
Yep.
So what changed?
So I had to pay homage to the man, right? And like to me, that car, I think we all have like a car.
I still have that car. I have the poster of the car doing the wheelie
Yeah.
in my parents' garage still.
I'll give you any money you want in the world for that. But we all have, in my opinion, that one car that was like the turning point for like, all right, like I'm officially obsessed with cars or drag racing, whatever. That car was it for me.
And then you bought it.
So it became available. And what's crazy is the car didn't look anything like it. The car, I had asked a bunch of times, like, man, what happened to this car? What happened to this car? What happened to this car? Car comes up for sale, and it's like a, you know,
A roller.
It's like it's a roller. It's silver. It's kind of beat, if we're being real.
Yeah.
Like paint and stuff, whatever. And it's back half and has wheelie bars. I'm like, man, is that the car? So I start calling around, and they're like, yeah, that's the car.
Oh shit.
So I bought it. After we got the car, we realized that to update that chassis to like make it like how we want it, we weren't going to use anything from that car.
Yeah.
So I was like, why cut up this car when we could just cut up our existing car? So we sold that car. We had our copper Supra, and we cut that one up, and that one's going to be the...
Oh, so you already sold that car?
That car got sold. I think actually the guy who bought it lives in Jersey.
Oh shit.
I don't know what he's doing with it. We're going to build our original Supra, but it's going to be wrapped with the Paisley wrap.
School.
Yeah,
no, that's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope. Yeah. So moving forward now, after all these years of working on Supras, you know, recently you stepped into the sport front category, and it seems like you're having a lot of fun with it. You're on your second, you know, car now.
Yeah.
Like, how do you compare that to like the rear wheel drive stuff?
Man.
And we're talking, for those that don't know, talking Toyota Supras, rear wheel drive into Honda Civic, front wheel drive.
Yeah. So I don't have like a really good answer for this.
Like, what made you do the jump?
So growing up, front wheel drive was just like for lack of a better term, it was stupid. Like if you had a rear wheel drive car, you made fun of the guy that had front wheel drive.
Always.
Like, I was like, what is this guy doing? You know. Well, something that kind of now sticks out in my memory is I don't think I ever really watched my dad lose many races, maybe like one or two. But growing up, the one car that I ever watched beat my dad's car was a green hatchback Civic.
From New York?
From New York. I think it was a car that came out of DRT.
Okay.
This is like back in the day.
So it's probably EG
Yep.
at the time?
It was a green EG, and it was a turbo car, and it was silly. It was fast. And like, couldn't believe it. I still had no interest in those cars at all. When I started promoting and doing races, you know, like sport front or extreme front, whatever you want to call it, that's like the only import sport compact class that's still
Competitive.
and around, you know, and like has a distinguished rule set and has like cars that are dedicated to that. It's the only one. So 2014, FL2K 14, I did a front wheel drive class. It was okay. It wasn't a ton of cars. And I think I did it again in like 18. That's when I really got into it. And the car that caught my eye, and it wasn't just the car, truthfully, it was more the driver, was Goldie. Driven by my boy Rob Mapps, rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
One of the best to ever do in a front-wheel drive car. Don't even try to tell me otherwise. And he had that same thing that I was talking about. It didn't matter. You could have a car that was 3/10 faster than him. If that man was in the lane next to you,
you're worried.
You were scared. You were like, "Yo, I
gotta cover him.
Do something.
Yeah,
I have to beat this man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter what car I'm in. I have to beat this dude." And he had that about him, and he wore it well. Like, he wasn't shy about it. Like, he would let you know, "I'm gonna get in this car, and it's gonna be a problem for you." And I love that about him. And he really caught my eye, and that car caught my eye. And then I bought my FL2K car. And part of the reason I bought that car, it was a car from the Bradenton camp, and he drove the Clutch Masters car, Goldie. I wanted to race a K Series. I knew that because I just liked those engines more, newer technology. I had interest in those engines. And I wanted to race with mainly Mapps. And right off the jump, him, Angel, Rob, they all took me under their wing. Norris, they all showed me a lot of love. I did my first front-wheel drive burnout of my entire life, Maple Grove, like 2 years ago. And I was hooked because growing up, the style of racing you would do back then, everything had a clutch.
Mm-hmm.
You had to shift everything. Like, it was more driver-oriented than it is now. And that's not a shot at anybody, but that's just what it is. And all the cars
just
now
technology.
They have dual clutch technology, you know, like, it's different. So kind of going back to that, and like when I first started racing Supras, same thing. There were manual transmission cars, and like a lot of driving that went into it. I wanted something that I had to drive, and I wanted something that was a challenge, something that I hadn't done yet. And that class just really impressed me. We did it at the reunion, which was during COVID, and I was hooked. So I bought that car, did that, learned a lot, and I loved that car. But I didn't feel like I had a lot of time at the time to run it.
And I overheard there was like a stipulation, like, to you buying that car, right? Like, you had to run a certain number or something like that.
There might be some truth to that. That sounds like something I would say, but I don't remember the details.
I don't remember either. Everyone was just telling me, "Yo, Vic bought this car."
Vic is like, "No, that's cap."
You know,
no, that
but it has to run.
Sounds like something I would
X
say.
amount of time. Like, it had to run a number.
No, yeah, that checks out.
Valid.
That car ran good. Like,
No, it did.
I only ran. So again, I did my first burnout in that car, in a front-wheel drive car ever, at Import Revival in Maple Grove. I missed Pan Am's, and then the next time I think I ran it was FL2K, and I went 8.2, which at the time was very good for that class. And then after FL2K, went to World Cup Finals, ran at 8.13 with a hangover.
That was a fun time.
Yeah. Ran at 8.13, which like at
You almost missed the getting into the car.
Man, you ain't supposed to be talking about this.
Hey, listen, man, you enjoyed yourself, right?
I did.
Listen, it's all good.
I ran at 8.13, which at the time was like the third or fourth fastest K Series car. And I was and like, again, it was just
competitive.
It was fun. Like, driving one of those cars. I've driven nitrous cars, naturally aspirated cars, turbo Supras with a clutch, turbo Supras with a turbo 400. I've driven a lot of different cars. The most fun that I have is when I strap into Goldie.
Not your new car.
We'll reword that. He's driven a lot of cars, but the most fun he's ever had driving a car is in a Honda Civic.
It is.
An 8-second Honda Civic.
7-second Honda Civic.
7-second Honda Civic.
Put some respect on it, man.
Tell him the time.
Yeah, actually correct me on that. What?
So Goldie's been 782 at like 192 with Bradley driving it. Bradley Dillon used to drive it after Mapps. That's the fastest K Series sport front pass ever. Mapps went 797, I believe, or 98. First K Series to ever go sevens in sport front. And my second event, I went 792, and my third event, I went 794.
Nice.
Yeah. And they told me I couldn't do it because I'm a big boy. They said, "Oh, you ain't gonna do it." I said, "You'll see." And we're gonna go 7.8.
They had some jockeys in there.
We're gonna go 7.8. Yeah, that car's had some drivers.
That's what I'm saying.
That car's and
just size. I'm saying size.
Some lightweight,
no, absolutely,
good drivers.
Yeah.
So there was, I could see why people would say that, but I'm gonna do it regardless.
Maybe this year FL2K.
We're gonna go 780s.
Word.
Yeah, we're gonna go 780s. But I wanted to drive something that was a new challenge, something that was different. The clutch was very appealing. The fact that I'd never driven anything front wheel drive was very appealing. The class was very appealing because, competitive sport compact class. Everything about it kind of just made sense to me.
I'll answer the question for you because Hugo's original question was, why did you switch, or what was the transition like from a Toyota to the Honda? You briefed on it earlier. The real reason why you switched was your competitive nature, because you've been competitive as a kid.
Yep.
At this point in which now you could technically buy whatever race car you want. You're like, I want to be competitive.
Yeah, and I wanted to race competitively.
Correct.
And I love Supras, but there's not a class. I can go to World Cup finals. I can go to TX2K. That's it. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to race competitively in a sport compact import
At multiple events.
and race all year, extreme front wheel drive is the class.
Yeah.
Period.
In a Honda.
Yeah, in a Honda. Well, not
necessarily.
There's a couple hitters.
So
There's a couple
Bradley
hitters.
just went really good. He went like 8-1.
And that's a Dodge, right?
And a Dodge
And a Dodge. You got the
And there's
Sentra.
some-
Sentra went 760s.
is killing it,
Nissan
yeah.
Sentra.
Oh, 760s. Wow.
Yeah. And he's like, I think that's the only car that's not a Honda that's been. There's only been 3 front wheel drive cars that have gone 760.
How about the Volkswagens? None of those guys?
Some of those are fast. They're not that fast, and they don't really run extreme front. But I think it's just because nobody's tried to really push it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
There's a couple Mitsubishis in the works.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that back.
Yeah, Sport Front's coming up.
So technically, you could have chosen another platform.
You chose
the reliable one.
proven.
I chose a proven one, and honestly, like I said, man, watching Maps drive Goldie is 110% the reason that I am in love with that class.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
So I asked earlier about the biggest challenge starting a shop at a young age, but because, technically you had a shop, you're managing a shop prior to you owning a shop, there wasn't really many challenges. But in the time that you've owned the shop, what is the one biggest challenge that you could name of owning a shop?
Man, I think the biggest challenge to owning a performance shop, at least in my opinion, is I feel like a lot of us go through this kind of identity crisis of, am I going to be this online parts store? Am I going to be an engine builder? Am I going to be a fabricator? Am I going to work on Supras? Am I going to be a dyno tuning shop? And my humble opinion on that is you should find 1 or 2 or 3 things that you are good at and you are passionate about and stick to those. We've been open since 2011 and we've worked on other cars, but we still primarily work on Toyota Supras. And the reason for that is because I would rather be great at what we do than just be
Mediocre.
okay at what we do, but I'm working on
Everything.
Dodge Vipers, Hondas, Toyota Supras, Nissans. I wanted us to be
The best.
or as close to that as possible. We're still striving for it every day, And my pride probably got in the way of that a couple times. But if I could start over, I would put all my chips into that.
Into being a super shop.
Yeah.
And you did mention, are you a dyno shop, a fabricator shop? What is Induction Performance in your words?
Well, the reason I mention it is because we're having this identity crisis right now. No, I mean, we're an online parts store. We do a lot of that, but we try to focus on Supras and parts that we use. We've always tried, and myself and Alpha and my guys, we all feel strongly that it wouldn't be right, and it just doesn't feel right, and it doesn't make sense to sell you something that I don't know anything about. So if you call me and say, hey, I need a turbo for my Viper, I can speak, with a little bit of knowledge, but I don't know. The answer is I don't know what turbo you need. If you call me and say, I want to make 750 horsepower, I have a stock motor 2J with this computer, and this is the fuel that I'm limited to, and this turbo mint, I can tell you exactly what you need. And that's what you're calling us for, that expertise. And again, it takes time to get to that point, but I would have just sooner realized that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an expert at the couple things that we do And I feel like in the last couple of years, we've really honed in on that. Like we've honed in on just developing 2JZ products, developing our 2JZ engine program, focusing more on 2J stuff, because that's what we know.
As a performance shop, where do you mainly see your revenue?
I mean, honestly, if you, a lot of people don't do this, but if you run your performance shop right, you know, the shop, the labor is going to be the most profitable thing if you really think about it, right? If you have a shop and you charge $125 an hour and you charge for your hours accordingly, that should be your most profitable thing. Unfortunately, the parts sales thing isn't like what it used to be. So, you know, you got guys that will go on Amazon and buy a turbo if they can, you know, and like you can't compete with that. So parts is not where it's at as far as like the most profitable thing. But in general, if you want to get into the motorsports or whether it's drift cars or whatever, the best advice I could give you is to figure out what you're best at, whether it's fabricating, tuning, building engines, wiring, whatever that is, and do that. And if it's something that it's a service, you're going to make your most money and you're going to control it because it's something that you're doing. You're getting up and doing every day.
And it's good hearing you say that, because we've had previous guests that we asked these questions of, you know, what will you change? And it's always, you know what? I want to be the best at. It's not, again, you know, you can have a machine shop, you can sell parts, you could do this, but all that stuff is bringing in little when you, if you focus on, you know, the one thing that you're good at and you knock it out the park every time, that's your specialty. Now I know, like, hey, I'm going to go to Vic for this because I don't need to worry about anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think if you can control that service, that's another struggle, is relying on other people. Like if your whole business is built around relying on vendors or relying on this guy or that guy.
Yeah, you ain't going to have no time.
Yeah, like, money. And you can get into bad spots. You know what I mean? And we all do, because no matter what, like none of us are completely self-sufficient. Right? So like, there's going to be a time where you have a car on your lift and like you could finish that car if this one part showed up. That's still going to happen.
That's just a shot.
But you want to minimize that. You know what I mean? You want to, like, if you can do a service that you are in control of or products that you are in control of and you are manufacturing, that's the key.
I always ask the question too, on if you notice on most of the podcasts, do you ever give out your personal number to all your customers?
Not all, but yeah, I do. People that I feel, and this isn't like a shot at anybody, people that I feel that
can respect your time.
Well, could benefit from having it, A, and will also respect my time. It's a two-piece deal.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't think that you respect my time and my, you know, like the fact that when I'm at home with my kids, my wife, and I think you're just, you know, not going to be respectful of that, there's no shot. And if I do, and I feel like you're disrespecting at all, like that, you know, that aspect of my life, I'll never answer. I won't work on your car or whatever.
I think it comes down to that for everybody.
Yeah.
So you went from, you know, I guess general repair, you know, working with your dad, you're changing brakes, literally doing a little bit of everything. Once you got into working on Supras, you chose your niche. Like, I like Supras, I'll work on Supras. And now you're at your next stage of where you're, I guess, fine tuning your business of Induction Performance of, yeah, we work on Supras and this is how we make our money.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I mean, I think that legitimately, if you look at a lot of the shops that have been around for a long time, I think like that it really takes, like if you just get into this and you don't have, like I didn't go to school, I didn't go to college, I didn't have any business background, like all this stuff, we learned it the hard way, like I was saying earlier, like the business side of it, you know? Like the knowledge of working on the car that's the easy part. Learning how to run a business as you're running a business is difficult.
The cash flow.
Yeah.
How to deal with your vendors.
I feel like it takes like 10 years
to figure that stuff out.
Figure all that stuff out.
No.
And even to this day, do you have any mentors helping you through it, or is this all just
100%? I mean, I'm very lucky that I have a lot of really good friends, you know what I mean? And we all bounce stuff off of each other. And I try to I'm so grateful for the people that have told me things and just any little nugget of information that people have given me over the years, that now I'm in a spot where I feel like I've learned a lot. I try to share as much as I can. I was just talking to you about some business stuff outside, and I was like, hey man, completely unprovoked, I was like, my only regret is not doing this, this, and this when I first started. And I just said it. I wasn't saying do this or do that.
Because we don't know any better.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't know any better. You know what I mean? I just said it. If I knew in 2011 half of what I know now, I'd be in great shape.
Now,
So basically, you're saying your mentorship is available at a price.
Nah, no price. If you're a good friend or a good ambassador of this industry, and you call me and you need help, I swear I'll help you.
So from working on cars, racing cars, how did buying a track even happen? I mean, that's like a racer's dream. I want to own my own racetrack. How?
Honestly, man, like, well, I'll go into the story, but like, I still, like, when you say it, it still like hits me like that. Like, it's so unreal.
Like, I own a racetrack.
No, it's unreal. Like, it does. It's crazy, man. But I will always believe that if you just do the right thing by people, these kind of opportunities will present themselves if they're meant to be, you know? And so the backstory is in 2013, we were building Supras and building cars, and we were going to Bradenton all the time. It was our closest quarter-mile track, and we loved it. And we were testing cars. And we became, like, I made friends with, like, everybody that worked there, and I would beg these guys, I want to do an event here, I want to do an event, I want to do an event, I want to do an event. And I didn't think it was ever going to happen. But my boy, Petey, that still works with us to this day, he's like, I'm going to talk to Alan, which is the previous owner, and I'll see what I could do. So one day, I'm sitting at our first shop. It's like 2013. Sitting there. Guy walks in. I've never met him before. And he goes, I'm looking for Victor. And I'm like, Victor, how can I help you? He goes, I'm Alan from Bradenton Motorsports Park. And I'm like,
no
so like, I stop what I'm doing. I put the phone on silent. I sit him down. And I give him my story. Like, he's asking me, like, about like how I got into it and what I want to do and all this. I give him my story. I give him my idea for an event. And he's like, let me see what I could do. And I'll see if we have any dates available and I'll get back with you.
Keep in mind, you're 23 years old.
Yeah. So I get an email from him and he gives me a date. And I swear, I replied to the email before I even looked at the date. I was like, yes. Like, I don't care. Just give me a shot. I just knew that there was like a demand for it in that area and that I could make it and it would do well. So he gave me a date. We did our first FL2K and now we're doing the event. And like, people are coming in and stuff, but I've never done one before. So I don't know like what's good, what's bad, whatever. Ended up, it was a decent event. And I'm like, are they going to give me another date? Like, am I going to be able to do this again? So we go to lunch and he's like, what do you think about doing this again next year? Same place, same time. And I'm like, done. So do that with him for a couple of years. That event starts to grow and get legs and do well. And, we went from just like, they gave us a day and we just did something to one of the bigger events at Bradenton. So we started in 13. By 16, 17, 18, or 16, 17, me and Alan are close. We're going to lunch like once a week or once a month. And like, he's a mentor of mine, great, just amazing guy, a great dude. And just, you could tell this man genuinely just wanted to see me do well. So for a long time, I go to the track for testing. I go to the track for FL2K. They used to do IFO. I'd go for IFO. That's it. I don't know anything about a pro mod. I don't know anything about any of his other events, none of that. He's like, you should come to the Snowbirds. So long story short, I don't make it. Snowbirds happens. I call him on Monday. I'm like, hey, man, Monday or Tuesday, how was the event? He goes, oh, man, it was really good, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. I had a heart attack. I'm like, what do you mean you had a heart attack?
Damn.
So during the event, like Saturday of Snowbirds, like pro mods are going down the track. We have the jet show. He had a mild heart attack, went to the hospital, whatever. And he said that, I believe it was his wife, said to him, man, God forbid something were to happen to you. What am I supposed to do with that racetrack? And he said he had never thought about it before. And he turned to her and he said, call Dave, have Dave call Victor. You guys sell it to Victor. So he tells me that, and I'm just like taking all this in, like, you had a heart attack and like you would sell me the track, and I'm like, whatever. But it now it's in my head. It's always going to be there. Like this, like
There's opportunities.
yeah. One day he may say, "Hey, I want to sell you this racetrack." You know what I mean? Like it's even a thing, which is like that's not even something that I dreamt of. You know, like being real. And I dream about a lot of stuff. Like
2016.
I have big dreams. Owning a racetrack, nowhere on that at all. So we go to lunch all the time. Probably like beginning of 2018, we're at lunch. And he's like, "So, remember that time I told you that? Whatever." And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I think it's time." He's like, "I don't think I want to wait till then. I think I want to do it now."
What year is this now?
Beginning of 2018. So I'm blown away. Like, just like, what? You know? We talk about it. We start figuring out how to do it. I start fire selling Supras and anything I had that I could. In April 2018, I bought the track.
Wow.
Now, you saying you fire selling Supras. How many Supras did you have at the time?
Oh, at that time?
Yeah.
So at that time, I was buying and selling Supras, and like anything that like was really good, I would try to keep. So I had a nice collection. That I remember probably like 6.
Now 2018, that's kind of before the Super like.
That's when the market started going up.
It started going up.
And I was buying and selling them, and like I was seeing it like it was happening in front of my face. It was going up, and I had some cool cars. Like I had a '98 Supra with 3,500 miles. So 98's the last year they made it. Black on black, 6-speed, twin turbo, like the car that you would have ordered if you could get a time machine and go to 1998 with 3,500 miles.
And that car's still around though.
It is. I sold it to a buddy of mine.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so like I sold that car. All the cars that I like that were like my personal collection, they're actually for the most part all still floating around with friends of mine and stuff. My brother took one of the Supras, but long story short, I just started selling stuff and doing whatever I could because
to get that cash together.
It's unheard of. Like I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. Like, what are you talking about? Buy a racetrack, you know? And Alan coached me through it, and he made it happen. And April of 2018, I was 30. I was 28 years old, and made it happen.
You bought a racetrack when you were 28 years old.
Yeah.
Successful. Not having any experience running a racetrack.
Yeah. I was good at run. I will say I was good at running events, but because Alan was the way that he was, like, there's a lot of details. There's a lot of details that go into running an event.
You only ran events for 4 years, though, because you said 2014 is when you started.
2013. Yeah,
5 years.
Yeah. But I will say, I think Alan, Dave, and to that fact, everybody that was at Bradenton when I was doing my events, they're some of the best at running an event. So like every little detail that like I would never think of, they would pull me aside and be like, "All right, so look at this and look at that, and we got to do this differently. We have to do that." And I was learning, and like the whole time I was being groomed for this job, and I just had no idea. You know what I mean? And it worked out.
Is he still around, Alan?
Yeah, he's still around. He's
hands-on or?
No, not really hands-on with my stuff. He's hands-on in the automotive industry. He helps out with some other guys that do stuff, and he's behind the scenes, but he's a mentor to some people that do some really cool stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Great dude. The guy's a living legend.
What is the biggest challenge you've faced owning a racetrack?
In South Florida.
We're not quite South.
You're not South, right? What is that?
Yeah. We're like
Central?
Yeah, we're Central Florida.
Okay.
Biggest challenge, man. Right now, our biggest challenge is urban sprawl. They're going to be building houses all over Bradenton area where we're at, and in 2005, when I started going there, you would get off of that exit 220, State Road 64, and there was a Hess gas station and a McDonald's and a Bank of America. And if you needed anything, that's where you stopped. And if you missed it,
Miss it.
Now, it's not the case. It's getting it's insane how much they've developed.
And by urban sprawl, you mean housing?
Correct, yeah. So there's like a line that the county lays out, and they say, hey, we're not going to allow anybody to build past this line until XYZ date. So for us, that was 2040. So last summer, we did millions and millions of dollars in upgrades. Brand new concrete track surface,
bleachers,
all new, aluminum grandstands, did a bunch of paving. We did a bunch of stuff, and shortly after that, we found out, a lot of people heard about it, but there were a bunch of hearings, and long story short, they broke that line, and they approved or pre-approved for some people to build houses in communities pretty close to us.
And I know that was shortly right after we had just seen each other at PRI.
Yep.
And literally right after you guys went back, you and Cletus had to, go in front of the board.
So talk about that. You said at some point you were told 2040 there would be no houses near the track. Like, what changed?
So I guess what changed? Hold on, I have to be politically correct.
Politics.
Yeah. I don't know what changed. I know that with anything, there's loopholes, and they were able to build to that point, but the loophole that I've learned, or what I can gather, is that if you build houses up into this street and they tell you can't build past the street, well, technically you can, because once you build to here, it's easy to get a continuance or a continuation. So it's easy to get this all rezoned and then say, I'm going to do a continuation
to
of
over
this
here.
neighborhood over here.
But there's a line.
They broke it.
I scratch my head still.
I scratch my head often. I mean, and
This was how long ago did you find this out? So
a year ago.
And have you seen them
A little less than a year.
building?
Oh, it's discouraging sometimes.
Like you see stuff going up?
When you drive down State Road 64 and you see them clearing land, and like model homes are up, apartment buildings that are complete, new public supermarkets. Like, we had a Publix, and now a mile down the road, there's another one brand new in a whole plaza. Like, you start to see that stuff, gas stations,
Shopping plazas,
they
said.
know what it is. They know what's coming.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're
People are
bringing
just-
that to support the community.
Yeah, they're supporting what's coming.
Yep.
So that's kind of, again, it's discouraging and it's a challenge. We have,
So what was that hearing all about then?
we were trying to get it to be denied. But what we didn't know was that at that point, it already had been pre-approved. And once it's pre-approved,
It's almost no turning back.
yeah,
So
you can't I can't tell you, yes, you're pre-approved to do this. And the next hearing, because 1,000 people are outside, tell you, sorry, I told you that, you can't really do it. These people spend millions of dollars as well to when
It's
they got that
politics,
pre-approval to get it going.
so what was the result of that hearing?
They were approved.
That's it.
So I mean, it's not that's it, in the sense that I don't think anything's gonna happen today or tomorrow. It may take 5 years, it may take 10 years, it may take 3 years. It depends on the economy, it depends on a lot of things and how long these houses are selling. But there's gonna be some effects. You know what I mean? There's gonna be a lot more traffic. Are they gonna want to widen the road? Where are they gonna take that from? You know what I mean? Like, is that gonna be on us?
Because your track is
It butts up to the road.
the road.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
If you were to add another lane, you're on your property.
Yeah. Are there going to be traffic lights? There's going to be a ton of traffic. Is there going to be issues with ingress and egress when people are pulling in and pulling out? These are all the things that you have to start to think about. And it's tough because my thing, since I've had that track, I've been known for reinvesting into the facility and into the sport. And I've spent a lot of money on that place since I've gotten it. Like I said, I just did bleachers and brand new concrete track surface and tons of new asphalt parking and new lighting and new timing system. I've done a lot of stuff. But now it's hard because that's what is expected of me. Like, this guy's going to give us the best of the best every time he can. And that's who I am as a person. But you have to be mindful now, like, how long do we got? Is it 10 years? Is it 20 years? Is it 5 years?
Yeah.
Like, at what point do I'm going to have a real conversation with myself? Like, pump the brakes a little. I mean, we're fortunate that we have a ton of support. So our neighbor is Garrett and Cletus at the Freedom Factory.
And he just bought that track.
Yeah, he bought it after I bought mine. So we're lucky that we have.
Same year?
No, he bought 2020.
Shortly after.
Yeah, it was like a year or two after.
And he dumped a lot of money into that
he
place
dumped a lot of money. So we're lucky that like collectively we have a ton of support. We have a good following. We can make some noise. And we stick together, like they can't bully me without bullying him and vice versa. We stick together. We're really good friends.
So you bought your track, so you own the land.
Yes.
And so does Cletus?
Correct.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, is there any opportunity for you to like pick up some of the neighboring land, or is that already sold?
Sounds like people already bought it.
Yeah, there's been some opportunities too, but it's not easy because now people, so it's a
now that they know it's coming.
You have people that know something's coming and they may be worth more, so they don't want to sell.
Right.
You have people that have been there forever and they're like, screw those people. We're not selling them anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's hard. It's a weird situation.
It sounds like you might, one of you guys might need to run for a seat in the,
we're not corrupt
in the board. You know what I mean? I'm just saying.
We're not grimy enough to be politicians.
So is the plan to put houses like directly next door to the track?
Not directly next door, but pretty damn close.
Like how many feet? Because I'm familiar with the track. You have the track, then you have land that's parking for the spectators.
Yep.
Like, were they planning to put houses next to the spectator lot?
I would say so. Like, you're familiar with the track. If you're driving down State Road 64, you get to that spectator lot. I would say from that spectator lot, half a mile away, quarter mile away.
So that's close.
That's close.
And they're like talking about these walls.
They ain't stopping that noise.
No. They're talking about building an elementary school in this neighborhood.
Yeah, that's wild.
I'm like, the week of the Snowbirds or US Street Nationals, we test pro mod cars.
Yeah.
From Sunday to Sunday. Like, all day. Them kids aren't going to be able to hear the teacher, like nothing. You know what I mean? Like, this is crazy stuff, but we've pleaded our case. But at the end of the day, you put yourself in their shoes. They've spent millions of dollars to even get to this point. It's just business for them.
Yeah.
That's wild. So, and in this area right now, there is no schools, right?
No.
So it's bound to happen.
Yeah, well, if they're going to build that many houses.
Man, put that closer to the exit.
I know. We'll see. I think that, again, with the amount of support that we have, I think that we'll be okay. I think we'll figure something out when push comes to shove. Whether it's we, move 15 miles east and build another track, a brand new track, with knowing what we know now and the things that we've learned, from our years of operating, maybe that'll happen. Maybe we'll have an even more badass facility, So I'm not too worried about it. It's challenging. It's something we'll have to learn to live with for a little while, and then someday we're gonna have to figure out something.
How much would you sell Bradenton? Let me reword that. How much would you sell Bradenton Motorsports Park for today?
You can't put a price on that place.
$100 million.
I mean,
No.
That's a lot of money.
The price would have to be.
How many acres is it?
That's a lot. The price has to be enough to go build another racetrack.
I like that
You know
answer.
what I mean?
I like that answer.
So whatever that is, whatever it costs to build a badass facility with more acres and more land to kind of give you more cushion, that's what the price is. And if not, we're gonna
Deal
be
with
making
it.
noise as much as we can, and they'll just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So that's enlightening to know that you have you're young. 2, you have a goal of, well, if my track gets shut down, I have another goal of opening up another one. Because
and to be clear, I don't want to. That's the right thing to say. I mean it, but it's the right thing to say. But it's not always. It hasn't always been that clear.
what do you mean by that?
Sometimes you start to feel like defeated. There was a point in time where all this was going on. I was like, we'll just run for as long as we can, and then we'll pack up our bags and we'll go home. And
So this sentiment wasn't how it was
It just depends on the day, man. I mean,
No, it's not even
a big
that.
pressure.
I'll say that for me, I got to give credit to Cletus on that because he's another one of my really good friends and a mentor. And he's just told me that we talked about it. He's pushed me. He's like, no, he's like, whenever that day comes, they have to pay us enough to build another track, or like, we have to be able to build another track. Like he's pushed me, and we feel strongly that no matter what we do, we're going to make sure that there's a drag strip in Bradenton, period.
Might not be Bradenton though.
Bradenton, Sarasota, we're going to be in there.
That's what's up. From building race cars, owning the racetrack, you mentioned a little bit about promoting the events. I'd like to get into that more because FL2K, your first event was 2013. So 10 years of running events now.
Yep.
I'll start with this. Everybody's familiar with Texas 2K. Obviously, FL2K is such a similar name. Induction Performance is actually the presenting sponsor of Texas 2K.
We're not anymore, but we were, yep.
Okay, so I've seen the name connected for very long. Could you elaborate on the affiliation or disassociation or what it is between the two?
So 2007, I was a senior in high school, and my spring break just so happened to fall on the same week as TX2K. And a couple friends of mine were like, man, you got to go. And at this point, I'm living in Florida, and it's a shorter drive. A lot of people from Florida would go. Like, you got to go to this event. You got to go. So sponsored the event. Went with a couple guys. Drove my dad's Supra in 2007.
Sponsored the event as Induction Performance?
No, we weren't Induction Performance.
Yeah, I was like, shop wasn't around.
No, it was just under like my dad's business name at the time. We had a couple Supras we worked on, but we wanted to support it and be a part of it. So drove out there. Drove my dad's Supra there. May or may not have blown the head gasket on the way there, street racing. Overnighted some parts, fixed it, raced, but essentially just got hooked on this event. And this was just like...
You had a great time.
It was amazing, right? So fast forward, I sponsored every year since 2007 and have not missed one.
Wow.
Since 2007. Fell in love with this event. And at one point, like a bunch of people from Florida, we would all caravan and like link up along the way. And we realized like, man, there's so many people here from Florida. We need something like this in Florida. So when I finally got the okay to do an event, and this has always been my thing. I feel the hardest part about creating a new event is the name. I feel the name could make or break you. Hardest thing. Everything's taken or has been done or sounds similar to something else. Like it's a key part of the event. And I had wanted to call it FL2K, but to me, the right thing to do was to reach out to Peter Block, who does TX2K. So I call Peter and I'm like, hey man, I have this crazy idea. I want to do this event. What do you think? And he was a little hesitant, but ultimately he gave me his blessing and we made an agreement. And that 2K is trademarked, TX2K. And like the use of the 2K moniker in automotive use has its own trademark. And we have an agreement that I'm allowed to use it. I'm the only other event. It's TX2K and FL2K. So with his blessing and his support, we made it happen.
Did you ask him to partner on the event or just
I
use
asked
the
him
name?
if we could use the name. And he was definitely hesitant. And I begged him, if we're being real. And I think he knew that I would do the best that I could. And I think I've done a decent job of, like just representing the brand well. And I think at a certain point, so it jumpstarts FL2K to use that name because there's already that brand name recognition of TX2K. Everybody knows TX2K. Mm-hmm. It's like arguably the greatest street car event on the planet. So everyone knows it. So it gave us kind of a jump start. And I feel like at some point when we started to do really well, we both fed off of each other. We probably both still do to an extent, So I think it's a good relationship. It just works.
So from the start, it was always approved by TX2K but not associated with TX2K.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. Yeah. And there's, what works in Texas for that event may not work in Florida. You know what I mean? Like it's a
different style.
They're similar, but they're different. Like we do a no time class. They don't do a no time class. There's differences, and like there's things that we do that may not work there and vice versa. So while there is a lot of crossover, and there's a good synergy between the two, they're two pretty different events, and we help each other as much as we can. And if I ever need something, he's been a good mentor to me as well. I'll call him and bounce ideas off of him and stuff. And he's definitely, helped me get it going.
Your event has always been in October?
Always.
So do you think the reason why he was okay with it because his event is in March?
The date is definitely a factor. Like if I called him and said, hey, I want to do an event in February,
right,
called the FL2K, I mean, I wouldn't even make that phone call. You know what I mean? But
you just know, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that for sure. I think the fact that he knew I was a huge supporter and fan of TX2K, to the point that I think he knows that like I would never do something to negatively affect TX2K. I would only do things to, have a positive impact on TX2K. I think all that stuff. And, again, I try to just...
You try to do good business.
I just try to always be transparent and just be real with people, man. And I think it pays off.
What is the biggest challenge you've faced organizing events?
Honestly, the biggest thing in Florida is weather. Man, it could be like raining in one lane and not the other, raining on like the shutdown of the track and not the beginning of the track. I think weather is the hardest thing. We're lucky, man. Not that Bradenton was like really, it was a well-established track, but it wasn't like really, really popping when I got it. But it is now, and like we have so much support, man. It's like cheating almost. Like, we started an event, and like the way I explain it to people, like if I say, hey, tomorrow I'm going to announce an event, it's going to be the first time I'm doing it. Like our base, like our core audience, our base is really strong. You know what I mean? So it makes it pretty good.
So the only thing that can mess it up is the weather.
Man, honestly, we have such a good crew. We have such a good core audience and such a good following and so many good supporters and good sponsors. Again, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like I've had it pretty easy.
And how often does weather mess up your business?
Man, lately it's been pretty good. You've seen it. We've had some pretty bad stuff. Like last year we had a hurricane 2 weeks before FL2K, caused like major damage. We had to move FL2K to Gainesville, which is like, I don't even like talking about it because it doesn't even sound real. It's like unheard of. But talk
about it.
So hurricane comes through.
All right, so we're gonna go backwards here. What is the biggest challenge you've faced hosting events? I think this is it, right?
This is it.
All right, so
this one is it for sure.
A hurricane happened.
So we had a hurricane. So we're doing all these upgrades to the track, right? So like our back's against the wall. We have to get them done. Like the whole goal was to get them done and like
before the event.
Yeah, have FL2K on like a brand new facility, So 2 weeks before the event, have a hurricane come through, tons of damage. So
what did it do to the track?
Oh, I mean, it tore all kinds of stuff up. Our scoreboards came down. Like you name it. Bleachers got messed up, signs got messed up, timing equipment got messed up, the scoreboard got messed up. Like putting those things up and down is not easy, like whatever.
Surface got messed up?
No. But
everything else.
Everything that could get messed up got messed up. And you have to understand is that like Bradenton didn't even have the worst of that hurricane. So now it's hard to rent equipment. It's hard to get construction crews because they're all going to help people that have real problems. You know what I mean? Like, we're dealing with something kind of superficial,
Right.
To me, it's a big deal, but in the grand scheme of things, there's people like
no power,
no
water, yeah.
So you can't fix anything. So hurricane happens, go down there, just defeated, discouraged, just like, man, what the hell? Tons of people step up, friends, supporters, locals, volunteering, cleaning up, just fixing things, anything they could do. and we're working, trying to like
Salvage it.
figure it out. But the whole time, everyone's like looking at me like, "Hey, man, if we don't get this fixed, like, what's the backup plan?" You know. And now I have people coming from all over the place. You guys were waiting on me to make a call, right? Like, we're about to drive from Jersey, Vic. What's going to happen? So, if we can't get this place fixed up, what are we going to do? So, man, I don't know. I think we have to cancel the event, you know? So we start talking about that, and my boys, again, saved the day. I got with Alan and Cletus, and we're all talking. And we're like, what about if we move the event? I'm like, well, the only track that I think we could move it to, realistically, in Florida is Gainesville, which is easier said than done. It's a big NHRA track, you know, like it's 2 weeks. No, it's a week and a half before. No, it was actually a week. I've never even been to Gainesville. Like,
Couple hours away.
yeah. So,
Actually, how many hours away is it from you?
2 hours.
North.
Yeah. So all this is happening.
Which is good though, because the hurricane affected South
Correct.
Florida.
Yeah. So it worked because like even
So Gainesville didn't get touched?
no, and hotels were impacted. We had people that like their Airbnbs were canceling on them, hotels were canceling on them. Like we had to figure this out. Like this is crazy.
A week before the event.
A week before the event, and I'm having a baby on October 3rd. The event is October 6th. So I've never even been to Gainesville. We make some calls. They'll entertain it. This is like on the Friday before the event. So 1 week from the event. Saturday morning, wake up early. Me and my sister get in the car, drive up there, do a tour, try to like figure out some logistics, whatever. And I signed a contract to rent the track and do this event. I haven't. I just signed it. Like I kind of like, you ever have a situation where you force yourself into the situation?
You were there.
I was like, yo, you know what? I put my back against the wall. And
What if the numbers weren't profitable?
You got to do what you got to do. Sometimes you take a loss.
But it could have been upside down though, right?
100% it could have been upside down.
But was it one of those like, it doesn't even financially make sense to do this. Let's just cancel it.
So, yes, it was. That was the thought. But the thing is, it goes back to what I said.
You ain't trying to give up.
When I'm not trying to give up, and when I put on an event or when I call my sponsors, like long-term sponsors and racers or whoever it is, when I call these people and ask them for anything, they support me. The racers support me. Like, I can't let these people down. I need them to know that they can count on me. That's a big thing. Like, when you're doing events, if there's anything on your record of you being unreliable or you don't pay payouts or you
let's be realistic. A hurricane just came through. My track was destroyed. I think people would have gave you the card. Like, I get it, but
50% of them might have.
Nah.
You don't know. You just don't know.
You understand it? I get it. If it got canceled.
I still get shit for moving that event. For moving it.
You should have just canceled it, is what you're thinking?
Some people say I should have. Some people say I did the right thing. Some people say I did an amazing thing.
Right. Hey, yeah, you're never going to make everyone happy.
No, exactly. So,
which is also a reason why I'm not going to make everyone happy. Does this make financial sense?
It was a risk I was willing to take. You know, it was a risk I was willing to take to not let the racers down. So like when I signed that contract, I hadn't even talked to my staff yet. Like we had to move all of our stuff, our tractors, our rotators, our sprayer, our sprayers, our glue, our staff. We had to rent Airbnbs. We had to make a hotel deal up there to get hotels for people up there.
You just have to move like people already shipped their setup to you.
Yeah, we had
merch set up.
Sponsors that had sent us all their stuff. We had to move up there. I'm having a kid on Monday. I'm not going to get out of the hospital till Wednesday. The event starts on Thursday. It was crazy.
And did your kid come on Monday?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But we did it. And
how'd all that stuff get up there? Trailers?
Yeah.
A lot of trailers.
Man, shout out to my little sister Adriana. She drove with me. She helped me load stuff. Everybody did, but I was tired, bro. She with me 24/7, loading stuff up, driving back and forth to Gainesville as many times
How many
as a
hours
human can in
each way?
2
hours.
2.5 depending on traffic.
Man.
Remember in one day, it was crazy. Went to the track, loaded up the trailer, and in my head, I'm like, I'm going to go load the trailer, and in the morning, I'll do a run. And you start doing it. I loaded the trailer up, and I drove to Gainesville. I'm like, all right.
Still got time.
So go back, load it up again. Like, I'll do another run in the morning. Drove back to Gainesville. Like, I did that like 3 times. But like, energy drinks and like support. And
Adrenaline was rushing.
yeah, and like I had all my staff was helping me and doing the same thing, and like we just made it happen. But we went into it. The conversations were, if not one single spectator shows up, but all the racers show up, and we do right by the racers, we save our name. You know what I mean? Like we're doing the right thing by the racers, because the way I've always looked at this industry, the event stuff, is it's an entertainment industry, and these are like your actors, but they don't get paid. They pay to show up and act. Now, what they get, remember, it's an ego-driven sport. What they get from us is the chance to win some money, and we provide them a platform and a stage to race on a big stage. The bigger the stage, the more they like it. The bigger the ego. You know what I'm saying? The more it feeds your ego. So you have to have the racers. You could do whatever you want. I can get 20,000 spectators to show up. If I don't have racers, I have nothing. They all leave. You have to have the racers. So I was like, if not a single spectator shows up and 75% of the racers show up and we do right by them, we will have them forever. Those people will support us forever because they're going to know that we will not let them down.
You do whatever it takes.
We'll do whatever it takes. That was the thought process.
Did the track Gainesville, because they knew, he's got no option at this point, did they hit you over the head?
No, I'll be real. NHRA, that's an NHRA on track. They stepped up and they helped us out a lot. It was very expensive because of the nature of the beast, the expenses that go into moving everything, and there's still a track rental fee, and then labor, insurances. Like it was expensive. Don't get me wrong, but they could have killed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they didn't. They were extremely accommodating. They had a great staff. That turned out, that could have went bad. That whole deal had a million different ways it could have went bad. And between their staff and our staff, and then our racers and our fans, everybody made the best of it, man. And it was a great experience. I had a blast.
Now you pulled it off.
If I didn't own Bradenton, I'd be moving that event around every year just because it was fun.
And your kid was 1 day old.
Yeah,
Like 3 days old.
3 days old. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So speaking of,
My wife's the real MVP.
nah,
The real MVP. Let me do all that stuff. If I were her, I'd be like, sit down. Just sit down.
Right.
Chill out. You know what I mean? My wife, she pushes me more than almost anybody I know.
so going to say that, you providing that stage, same thing, PRI, we're talking over a table, just a couple of us, and you came up with a crazy idea and you said, hey, Hugo, do you think I can get X amount of racers for the World Series of Pro Mod to come down? And this was front wheel drive cars.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I think you can make it happen. And you were like, I said, we got one right here, friend of the room, Ricky Silva. He was like, yeah, I think you can make it happen. It's between cars and then, up here and down there. And talk about setting a stage. You kind of set, for the most part, for Sport 1 front wheel drive to race at the World Series of Pro Mod, that was a huge stage.
Yeah, no, it was probably the biggest purse for that class ever.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a huge stage, that goes back to, selfishly, I love that class, what I mean? So like I wanted to do it for some of the wrong reasons,
Right.
Some of it was for me,
personal,
selfishly, yeah,
which is
whatever.
cool.
But that wasn't, I had to do that. That's how I felt.
So Drag Illustrated just announced their 2024 event.
Yep.
Back at your track.
Yep.
What dates?
First weekend of March, whatever that is. I forget the dates, but first weekend of March. That Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
I'll be the guy to ask. Is there going to be front wheel drive racing at that event?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Because I know people weren't too happy because a lot of oil downs, which is notorious with
Yeah. So
the front-wheel drive class.
It's definitely been a conversation that Wes and I have had. Selfishly, I want to do it again. But I mean, I definitely think it's important that we have a better showing. Not that we had a bad showing, but Sportfront is at a point where it's been around for so long. Everybody's trying to go faster. The manufacturers are providing us parts that are making more and more power every year. And at the end of the day, they're still little 4-cylinder engines, and we're making 10 times what they made from factory, horsepower-wise. They break. It is what it is. But we definitely need to, for the class to survive long-term, we need to have more side-by-side racing and less braking. So we are discussing ways to incorporate front-wheel drive into this event again. We loved it. I loved it. My thought was, I have to put more eyes on this class because, like we said, it's the
premier class.
It's the only import sport compact class left, in my eyes. Like, you can race a pro import like rear-wheel drive car twice a year. You know what I mean? It's what it is. Maybe 3 times a year. You can go to Pan Am's, World Cup, a race in Orlando, maybe, So you can race that 2 or 3 times a year. I love those cars. That's what I grew up like. That was like the best of the best growing up.
Yeah.
But there's nobody leading that train. There's no definitive rule set. There's no, like tech director for any of that stuff. Like it's not organized. So me being me and Wes being Wes, something we've always talked about when I do his show is how can we do some kind of crossover stuff? Like, how can we get more guys that, you go to FL2K, right? Stands will be packed at Bradenton. We've been doing the snowbirds for over 50 years. I would venture to say 80% or more of the people at FL2K have never been to the snowbirds. The snowbirds is one of the sickest outlaw pro mod races on earth. Jet show, $50,000 to win pro mod race, side by side, just sick racing. If those people that are at FL2K, they were in the stands for snowbirds, they'd be hooked. But how do we get them there?
Yeah.
That's always been the conversation. And we feel, Wes and I, this is like, I think what connects us.
Before you get there, the question that you're going to answer right here is, how do you get import racing fans to pro mod races?
Well, I guess that's what I'm answering. That's what me and Wes have always connected over, is that we have to do that it's our responsibility to do that. If we care about drag racing as much as we do, it's our responsibility to try to mix it up as much as possible and do as many crossover things like that as we can, because it's imperative for the sport to grow. Like, there's no reason that a sport front-wheel drive guy shouldn't be in the stands watching pro mods in awe and be like, oh, this is cool as hell. You know what I mean? And they should be thinking, that's where I want to end up. And there's no reason that pro mod guy shouldn't be watching sport front-wheel drive guys and being like, dude, these little 4-cylinder cars are insane. Like, they're clutch, they're shifting, the way you have to stage the car, putting down all this power on a little 24-inch tire, like, they should be impressed as well. And there needs to be that mutual love and respect of our sport for our sport to continue to grow. And I don't like the segregation that we have in our sport. You know what I mean? Like, we shouldn't have import events and domestic events and pro mod events. We should have drag racing events. And that's something that me and Wes feel really strongly about. So our opportunity to work on that was to have extreme front wheel drive at World Series.
And I think you guys did a good job, but I think just because of the sheer payout amount, everyone was kind of like shooting.
Swinging for the fence.
Yeah, so I think it's also the first time that class has seen any kind of
And it was
payout
also the first race of the year.
Right. For a lot of people.
A lot of new combos, new setups.
Yeah.
Some people came out on, a brand new engine and it brakes. Like, things that happen.
Right.
First race of the year
It's always tough.
is always the hardest one.
And I think going on, like if you guys planned it, obviously now you guys have a date for next year.
Yeah.
If that was something that was going to be available, it gives everybody a chance of like, all right,
We need to go test our cars.
I'm going to
in
prepare
February
for that.
and break all that stuff. And,
Right,
And,
and
test
figure
all
it
these
out.
new parts and so on. And
I think it just gives.
So as of today, no definite, but it sounds
today, the only thing I can tell you about World Series of Pro Mod is that it's going to be bigger than last year. It's going to be better than last year. We're working on ways to pay more money where we can, which is insane because we already paid so much, $100,000 to win Pro Modified. But
What was the total payout in that event for between all the classes? If you can,
like 250,000.
that's a big purse, man.
Yeah. But so we're having the event. We haven't released a lot of details yet because we're working all that out. I feel strongly that you'll see front wheel drive cars there. We just have to make it make sense. And I also if we're going to do that class, I'd like to increase the payout again. I think that I'd like it to be the World Series. It's always going to be the World Series of Pro Mod, but I want it to be the World Series for us as well. You know what I mean? Like when we show up, I want us to feel the same way those Pro Mod guys feel. Like this is the race that I want to win. If I win one race this year, I want it to be this one.
I like how you touched on you're an advocate of drag racing in general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it makes sense. You own a drag strip. It doesn't matter make or model that goes down your track. You need cars to stay in business. And because you're a fan of the sport, you need cars to go down the track to make sure the sport continues. You need to make sure there's new fans coming in. And what is your take on, you touched on you don't like the segregation of the imports separating from the domestics. How do you change that? How do you make import fans appreciate domestics, and how do you make domestic fans appreciate imports? What is your take on that, and how do you plan to change that?
We just have to find more ways. I believe that you just have to see it. And actually I think I can prove that. I think that I can tell you, I can name 10 people or 20 people that I can call just off the top of my head that never saw a Pro Mod race last year, that when they asked me this year, hey, are we going to have front wheel drive at World Series Pro Mod again? And I was like, I'm not sure. They're like, I'll be there either way. I won't miss that event. That was the coolest drag race I've ever been to. Some of the best racing I've ever seen. So I think we're already doing that. We're already seeing that. But I think my belief is that we just have to get them there once. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to see it. They don't know what they're missing. We just got to get them there one time.
I like how you said that. You don't know what you're missing because you haven't been exposed to it. So the best way to increase the fans of that type of racing in general is at the big import races to have a few pro mods there so people could appreciate, like, dang, those cars are fast.
Yeah.
And then vice versa. So the World Series of Pro Mod is, I guess, taking the lead on exposing that.
Yeah.
It's kind of been done before, but not with that direct mission of, I want those fans to appreciate this as well.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And I mean, there's also the difference too that some people prefer quarter mile drag racing, which I do as well. And we run that up, we run the Pro Mods 8th mile. Some people have a difficult time understanding that or like grasping that. Like they see the numbers on the board and they're like, or the race is already over. I think there's a little bit of that. So it just takes time. Like we'd have to put this in front of you. That's what it is. I believe in the product. Now I've just got to
sell
it in front of people.
Yeah.
That's it.
Which I think you guys did a very good job last year. I mean, this event was dope.
First event, man. First time doing that event at that track and working with Drag Illustrated, and that event was sick.
Yeah.
That was a vibe that I have not felt in a very long time, if ever.
As a track owner, what is your opinion on the future of drag racing?
Oh man, I think drag racing is killing it right
How about the future of drag racing?
Well, so that's the thing is I think that right now there are a lot of people doing a lot of good things in drag racing. A lot of good promoters, a lot of tracks spending money on their facilities, a lot of companies stepping up and sponsoring events that we haven't seen before, a lot of new events coming out. We have all the ingredients to make drag racing survive and do well and grow, which that's what we need to do, right? We need it to grow. I feel like I know where your head is at with this question. So I think
I'll tell you where my head is at. With a lot of tracks closing in the recent years, and because you're the first track owner to be on our show, do you sound very optimistic on the future. What is your also the EPA challenges, affecting the industry as a whole?
I think our two biggest hurdles in the future will be the long-term effects of all this EPA stuff, because there are going to be long-term effects of that, and the long-term effects of manufacturers going away from combustion engines. Are we going to go to silent drag races in 10 years? I hope not. You know what I mean? I don't think
Opposed to it?
not opposed to it, but I don't think that lasts.
It's not there yet.
I don't think we're there yet, and I don't think that is going to ever be as exciting as a combustion engine drag racing. Period. I don't care what they do. I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong, because maybe in 50 years that's just what it has to be, right? I don't think we're there yet. I hope that it doesn't have any effects in the next 10, 20 years. But those are two things I think, those are the hurdles. Those are the things we need to be mindful of. I think from a promoter standpoint, I've always said this, and it's easier said than done. We're all guilty of making it difficult at some point or another. I think promoters need to work together more. Stop doing events on top of each other. Stop just doing all the dumb high school stuff that people do. Sometimes it happens.
Like you said, it's an ego-driven sport. So
It is,
you got
but-
ego-driven drivers and ego-driven promoters.
We shouldn't be, though, because we have a responsibility to, so like some of these promoters, this is how they make a living, right? So whether or not you love this sport, if let's just say this is your job, right? You just fell into being a promoter because you're good at it. You can give two shits about drag racing. Cool. It's your responsibility to make sure that your industry is strong and healthy. You know what I mean? We need to find more ways to work together. We need to make it, we need to make this work. We need to make this last. We need to make it good. And it's our responsibility to not put it on the racer or the spectator to choose, am I going to this event this weekend or am I going to that event? Because all you're doing, somebody may be the better promoter or whatever. No matter what, you're hurting both parties. Both events will suffer. It's just what it is.
I know nothing about the sport, but I've read about it, watched about it. Golf with the PGA and Live. Do you know much about that?
I've heard a little bit about it, but I don't.
So high level, there's going to be some golf fanatics who may watch this and be like, Brian knows nothing. I don't know much. I don't know anything about golf, but I do know the PGA has been around the longest, the most prestigious, and Live, a Saudi, I believe, or a Middle Eastern based new tour came around, unlimited amount of money. So for them to start a new league, they basically wanted to bring a new light and new take on golf and not be as classic as the PGA is. They started putting ridiculous amounts of money to PGA golfers, like, come play with us and we'll give you 20 times the amount of money that PGA would have paid you. And the PGA in the first couple of years that this was happening were like, no way, if you guys go over to them, you can't even play for us anymore. And just recently, in the past couple months, PGA and Live now work together.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the struggle that, very relatable. There is that competition between the two. But like you said, I think the PGA kind of, they I don't know. They caved in, or they manned up and just said, hey, for the future of the sport, these guys kind of just put us out of business because they have unlimited amount of money.
Well, so I guess my feeling is that, or my opinion of this kind of stuff is that we should never let. So, all right, this is business for a lot of people. I love drag racing more than most people. That's how I feel, right? I love it. I race myself. Like, I promote on the track, race, sponsor events. I see it all, right? I've been in every seat.
With that, what needs to be done, in your opinion, for the future of import drag racing?
Well, that's what I was going to get at is, I think for drag racing in general, which I'll answer your question too, but for drag racing in general, we should never let the business affect the product, right? So it's like, I shouldn't, have my products made somewhere else for a lot less because that's a good business decision, but the products suffer. Does that make sense? Like,
but how does that apply to race cars or racers?
Well, no, that applies to drag racing because we're letting the business get in the way when we do things like when people have events on top of each other or they're trying to steal sponsors from each other and just doing, dumb stuff like that.
So you're saying that's doing more damage to the sport?
You're letting the business have a negative impact on the product, the sport. Import drag racing needs, which I've seen a little bit of it lately with Chris Miller, but it needs more organization. It needs more events. And
you're saying it needs more events, although you're saying don't put events on top of each other. You got 52 weekends in a year.
We need more events, but we need more events that are going to follow the same rule sets, the same structures, have the same, so like,
you shouldn't have to change your setup.
Exactly. Like, drag racing for imports is never going to grow if the only rule set that we pay attention to, for example, and this is how I feel, is for years World Cup finals, right? Because what happens is people build a car, don't pay any attention to a rule set. In the import world, this is how I feel it happens. They build the car. Then it's World Cup finals time, and they go looking through the rules like, man, what class do I fit? What class do I fit? What class do I fit? And they just buy a tech card where they fit, or they buy a different turbo, or they do something so that they can race at World Cup finals because there's no structure. Domestic guys, they build an Ultra Street car, they build an X275 car, they build an LDR car. You get what I'm saying? They build a Pro 275 car. Yeah. They build the car around the rule set. We don't have that structure. So we need more events that are similar and more events that are willing to work together and follow the same rule sets and do things, because that's what's going to build the scene. That's what's going to make it grow.
Like X275, for example, how many events do they have in a year?
If I had to guess, maybe 12, 15.
It's a lot.
And all across the U.S. or all?
Yeah, all over the U.S., yeah. But you see, like, my point is that X275 is a rule set that John Sears and X275 created, but there are events that he has almost not no involvement, but that he's not heavily involved with that use that rule set.
Yeah.
They don't change it so their buddy can run. That's the rules. Those are the rules. That's the rule set. People build cars, manufacturers build parts for those rules. That's what the import scene lacks.
So me not having a familiarity with the X275 class and how it's governed, there's a set of rules. Whoever runs this class, do they have to get permission? And is the, I guess the governing or whoever the tech, is it from one sanctioning body, or whoever promotes the event just techs it according to this rule book? So
the drag radial stuff has been getting a lot more organized in that sense. So you have RTRA and you have the Radial Outlaws. Those are like the two, we'll call them sanctioning bodies for now, right? So RTRA and Radial Outlaws, for the most part, follow the same rule sets. And they both have a point series. And they both have tech directors. So like, like you're going to run on these rules. Your car is going to be teched by the same, couple of guys or one guy at every event, and you can run in this point series. All you have to do is show up, buy your tech card, I think Radial Outlaws, they have like a membership fee, but you win at the end of the year, you can win like 20 grand for winning the points championship or something like that. But even that should be one, in my opinion, that should be one thing. It shouldn't even be two things. But as long as they both follow the same rule books and like one guy's just doing his couple races here and one guy's doing these couple races there, that's what grows the sport.
Yeah, it allows the same racer to race, like
Correct.
you said,
but
more races.
But I guess what comes with that is that they know what's best. Like, not that they know what's best, but they know that it's good. When I show up to this race, like, the rules are going to be enforced. If one guy goes really, really fast with a certain combination and it's not fair, they add weight to this guy. If one combination can't keep up, they take a little weight off. Like, it's always being governed and it's always being managed and it's always being they're doing whatever they can to be competitive.
And I think that goes back to what Wes always talks about in you, the side-by-side drag race.
Correct. Nobody wants to go to watch racing when it's not competitive.
Yeah.
I want to be on the edge of my seat.
Is that class growing?
Which class?
X275 or the RTR?
I think radial stuff goes through its ups and downs. Right now, we're not in the radial season because it's so hot. It's like almost impossible to like give a good radial prep track. So there's not a lot going on. But once we get to October to March, those guys will be racing all the time.
Are there new cars coming out constantly?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's like I said, but you just need that structure.
So I'm going to end this with a question that I don't think it has been addressed from you since it happened. This was back in May at a race at Virginia Motorsports Park. I think, Hugo, you remember reading about this. Another import racer, Sean Ramey, put up a post on his Facebook page that had a picture of you with like an X over it.
I was happy he used a good picture.
It made me want to read it because I was like, why is there a big X on top of Vic?
Yeah, that was a good picture. I have some bad pictures floating around. He used a good one, so I was happy about that.
So the post was something in regards to a race both of you guys were competing at, and they had a transmission that I guess was sort of a gray area, was legal, wasn't legal. And then at the race, I guess it was determined that the transmission was not legal anymore. So they had to put a different transmission in it. So they were upset, miscommunication or whatever it may be, that transmission was no longer allowed, even though they thought, or it was allowed before they got to the race. And ultimately it came down to a race between your team and his team, in which his team won against you. And then Sean said that he was sucker punched from behind, that there was actually a physical altercation between the two camps. People got hurt, or there was a fight. He put up a pretty long post about this. Nothing. I even checked your page after, and a couple of days after, I was like, what? There's always two sides of the story. What do they say? There's the truth, and
there's three sides.
There's three sides of the story.
There's one side,
my side, his side, and the truth.
then the truth.
There you go.
Yeah, that's what they say.
So, am I right to this, that you never put up with your side of the story?
So, if somebody says that you robbed a bank and it's completely ludicrous, you're not going to give energy to that. You're not going to go online and be like, oh, I didn't rob a bank, because now you look like you're defending yourself. You look like you may have done something. So I'm not going to defend myself for something that I didn't do, something that I'm innocent of. But I will entertain the question. So a couple days before the event, which it's not my event. The event was an event at Virginia Motorsports Park. I just happened to make the phone call to ask if they would host our class. A couple days before, I got a text. I have the screenshots too, if needed. I get a text. Is the sequential transmission legal? I said, the way that I interpret the rules, it is not. However, not my call. John Sears is the tech director of this event. He is the man to ask. Can you ask him? Sure, no problem. So mind you, I don't know Sean Ramey. He's not the person asking me. Me and him have never met. We have never spoken. Send John Sears a text. He goes, the way that I interpret the rules, sequential transmission is not legal. I said, okay, so the official answer is it's not legal. Yes. Screenshotted it and replied to the person and sent them the screenshot from the tech director. Fast forward to the event. We get to the event. the person asking was asking for Sean Ramey. He got the answer that it wasn't legal and still decided to show up with the transmission he was told wasn't legal. He makes a run. I made a run. Or the guy, Michael Manley's car. It's not even Sean Ramey's car, Michael Manley. Michael Manley makes a run. I make a run. It's qualifying. I'm at the scales. They're at the scales like in front of me. It's a couple of us. We're all waiting because they're going back and forth with John Sears. And then they ask me, what's my opinion? Because the rule set, they use the same rule set from World Series of Pro Mod because that is what John Sears knows. That is what John Sears teched just 2 months before, you know. That was the rule set that the race was agreed to be run on.
I'll put a disclaimer to this. I think what I said earlier is not verbatim for what Sean said. So I'll make this clear. What I said to start this conversation is not verbatim for what Sean put. It was kind of a summary of how I understood it. No. So we're just getting, that was just to bring up the topic of the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And this is water under the bridge as far as I'm concerned. But I do think I will address it just because, you asked and I respect you guys. I'll answer. So anyways, I was asked my opinion. My opinion was, no, I interpret it as it's not legal and it's not fair to me because as a racer in the class, if I thought it was legal and I thought it was an advantage, I would have one. This guy would have one. That guy would have one. We would all have them. It's just what it is. So it's not fair that A, you asked and were told it's not legal and you still showed up with it. And B, we should all have the biggest thing you could do, the best thing you could do for a class is we all need to have the same opportunity, right? So we all need to have the exact same opportunities to win. That's why I don't believe that people should be able to have like custom one-off parts in certain classes. Like we all need to be able to pick up the phone and buy the same stuff and show up with the same stuff. If you can't afford it or you don't like it, whatever, but we should have that opportunity. They asked me my opinion. I said no. I went back to the pits, worked on my car, whatever. Fast forward, there's some talk that he went on Facebook and made a post, said something.
This is during the race?
This is during the race. I heard that somebody was going to go over to address the post because he said something about people from Florida. Somebody from Florida was going to go, like, that knew him. Like, hey, man, what's this post about? We didn't say anything, whatever, because we didn't. Go over to his pit, trying to talk to him. Again, I don't know him. My friend is talking to him. I'm not talking to him. They go back and forth, and he gets very loud, very aggressive, threatens us, tells us to get the fuck out of his pit. That's what he said. At that point, you don't want to talk. You're threatening people. So we're going to leave. But, we're all nice people. We're all family men and businessmen and all that. You threaten somebody. You're saying the next time I see you, if there's potential that you may do something to me. So we walk away, and that's how it's left. Next day, we thrashed all night on my car. We just so happened that semifinal or one of the rounds, we're racing Michael Manley. I'm in my car. I do my thing. I go to make a run, hit the tree. Car's running good. Go to put in second gear. Shift fork is bent. Car won't come out of gear. Michael Manley goes on to win the race. My car's stuck in first gear, whatever. When the story that I got is that and this was corroborated by several people that even were friends of his. Actually, one of his guys said, this guy always talks shit and starts shit and we get, stuck dealing with it. But anyhow, he said some things that you don't say to anyone.
Who did?
Supposedly Ramey. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know.
He was in the car.
I was in the car.
Oh, yeah.
I'm at the end of the track.
And they're saying this was happening at the line after
Correct.
You raced.
I'm not there.
Right.
Words were exchanged.
Because it's your team at the line and his team they're literally next to each other.
Correct.
Yeah.
Words were exchanged. People said things that they shouldn't say to people. There was a scruffle. I wouldn't call it a fight. That was it. Michael Manley, the owner of the car, came over to our pit afterwards, apologized on his behalf, said that it was unnecessary drama. We shook hands. We talked. We were cool. I don't know why he made that post. The only thing I can come up with, because I don't know why I was the target, because I literally had the least amount of involvement. But I guess if you post a picture of, Ronald McDonald, and he wasn't at the race, or, nobody knows, there's no significance behind, his face, maybe the post won't get any traction, but if you post my picture, maybe it will. I don't know. I didn't have any other interaction with him besides the one time I went over there and he threatened all of us, told us all to leave his pit. I haven't ever talked to him again ever since then. I don't particularly remember what he looks like. I don't care. I don't hold a grudge. He lied. That's my opinion. He fabricated that story, most of it.
The end of that story was that he won the race, but they were disqualified.
Yes. So the track made the call, which again, it's not my event, that it was going to be a double DQ because there was a fight. Which to me, that is the right call. I respect that call. Had I won, I would have been pissed, rightfully so. The same way they probably were. But it's the right call to make. You can't go to somebody's event and start a fight or have a fight. That's a very poor representation of the event, the sport, all of us. Like you should.
Has that ever happened at one of your events?
No, it hasn't. And truthfully, before that happened, I don't know what I would have done in that situation. But now I know that I would double DQ him. But I think that's fair. You shouldn't be allowed to participate and potentially win money in a trophy and have a great time if you're putting my event at risk. If you're putting the event at risk and you're causing problems, you need to go home.
Man, that's a big one because could this go to trial because we didn't do anything wrong and we were attacked, so now it's his word versus their word. And
But the whole thing is he said, she said.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, right? The facts are
involvement.
I was at the end of the track in my broken car. So you can say whatever you want to say and you could try to spin it however you want. I wasn't there.
Right. Man, that must have been very upsetting for you said Michael Manley was his name?
Yeah, the owner of the car, yeah. He got the short end of the stick because he was going to go on to the finals.
Right.
And it was a $10,000 race.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So you think moving forward, you already said it's water under the bridge. If in the future, you guys will work together or he'll come to one of your races or vice versa.
I wouldn't work with him unless he...
Are you talking about Ramey or Manley?
Yeah.
Ramey. I have no issues with Manley at all. And I wouldn't say that I have an issue with Ramey. I don't. Because if I did, then I would call him and we would address it. I'm not putting any energy into this, at all. But I would not work with him unless he publicly apologized to me. And the little bit that I saw of him, I don't think he's that guy. I think he enjoys this kind of drama. That was one of the things he said to somebody when they called him about, yo, why'd you post this guy's picture, blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't do that. He said that, he enjoys the drama, essentially.
That's what it is then.
But yeah, unless he publicly apologized to me, I wouldn't. Now, if I did something wrong, I would publicly apologize to him. But what I don't like is the lying. You know what I mean?
Let's just be real.
You shouldn't post my picture and then attack me for something I didn't do.
Yeah.
It was in my car. So that's how I feel about it. It's not good for the sport. It goes against everything that we're trying to do, everything we've just talked about. I put a lot of time and effort and money into that class in particular. I put up, I raised the money for that class to happen at that race. I'm the reason that class had a $10,000 payout. I'm the reason that we raced at World Series of Pro Mod. I'm the one who pays $25,000 in payouts at FL2K for this class. I do a lot. I put a lot of energy into this class. The last thing I'm going to do is everything he accused me of doing.
Right.
I don't think there's any other promoter that actually races and competes at their own event.
There are. Not many, but there are.
There are?
Yeah, Jim Halsey, they own Seesaw.
Oh, that's true.
He runs Pro Mod. He runs Pro Mod at his event.
Does he run Yellow Bullet?
Yeah.
He races that event?
He races Pro Mod at Yellow Bullet. There's others. That's just the one that came to mind. Yeah.
And I think Jim Halsey is a testament of a purveyor, supporter, advocate of the sport.
Yep.
Who is,
and he's a man of integrity, right? Nobody questions him. He does it and nobody questions him. And I do it and I go through tech the same way everyone else does. If somebody wants to protest my car, they can come take it apart. I do it all by the book and I don't get any special treatment. I don't want any special treatment.
I've seen that from you. I've seen that
when I win, I want my win.
Legitimate. Yeah.
I want my win.
Nobody's saying,
I don't want any asterisks next to my win.
Right.
So
Now, I've seen guys come up to you and beg like, "Yo, I didn't make my qualifying. I'm here now."
Yeah, I've done things to friends of mine. I don't break the rules for them. Like, it is what it is. I've had friends of mine, like good friends of mine. Yo, man, I missed last qualifier. I'm not on the ladder. Can I run behind 1050 index? You can't. They curse me out and they walk away. But if they're really my friends,
I've seen that firsthand.
They walk back later on and they understand, like,
rules are rules.
I did the right thing.
Like you said, rules are rules.
And if I bend the rules for them,
I got to do it for everybody else. Absolutely, 100%.
You can't do it.
That actually answers a good question of what is the biggest challenge of being a racer owner? What is the biggest challenge of being a racer, track owner, and event promoter? It's a lot of drama.
Nah, honestly, it really isn't. The hardest part is, and this falls back on my staff, like I'm blessed that I have such a good staff that I can focus on my car, wrench on my car if needed, and race my car and not have to worry about the event, because we're at a point where our staff does such a good job running the event and keeping the event running and running on time and track prep good and, you know, all of those things. Because if not, I mean, when I first started, I had events where I would bring my car in the trailer, go to the event, unload the car, get so caught up in the event, and didn't make a single pass. But I'm fortunate enough that now I'm at a point where I'm able to race.
I like it. All right, that's going to wrap us up for this podcast. Vic, we appreciate you again for coming out. If anybody wants to follow you social media, can you drop your handles?
Yeah, so IP Vic on Instagram, Induction Performance for the shop, Bradenton Motorsports Park for the track, FL2K for the event. Appreciate you guys having me. This is like, I watch Drink Champs. This is like the Drink Champs of the automotive industry, and I wanted to do it. This is cool.
This is the podcast that the automotive industry is talking about.
That's right.
I'm Brian ESR, Hugo ESR. If you like this episode, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.